Worldwide parent coach and conscious educator Sue DeCaro is on a mission to revitalize the joy in parenting. Welcome to Conscious Parents, Thriving Kids, a podcast designed to help parents all over the world create deeper connections with themselves and their children while overcoming life's daily parenting challenges. Listen in if you want to bring more laughter, love, and enjoyment to your home life.
Welcome to Conscious Parents, Thriving Kids, a place for all things parenting. I am your host, Sue DeCaro. I'm super excited to introduce my special guest on this episode, Dr. Christopher Willard. Chris is a clinical psychologist, author, and consultant based in Massachusetts. He is the author of 12 books, including Alpha Breaths from 2019, Growing Up Mindful 2016, and The Breathing Book 2020, translated into more than 10 languages. He has been involved and invited to more than 24 countries to speak and has presented at 2 TEDx events. His thoughts on mental health have been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, mindful.org, CNN, and elsewhere. He also teaches at Harvard Medical School and is the father of 2 children. Welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode.
Thank you so much, Sue. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's just great. So yeah, thank you.
Well, let's dive right in. We are in the midst of a pandemic, and let's talk about mental health and especially focus on mental health for our children right now in today's world. Can you share a little bit about what you're experiencing and seeing, both as a father as well as, someone who does this work in the world? What are you seeing
Right.
in children?
And I think that's such a good question, because what I see with my kids is it's also different than what so many other kids are experiencing in so many different ways. And my kids are really lucky and really privileged in the our school system. My kids are 2 and 5, so my daughter's at home, and my son's also went home from school. And for the most part, they're at an age and we're at a flexibility level where they get a lot of time with mom and dad. And that's been, I think, really nice for them. Exhausting for us. My wife, was on sabbatical this semester, did not really get a sabbatical this semester. And I, am working from home, and they're jumping in on my Zoom calls. But overall, I think for them, it's largely been okay. But I'm also, so acutely aware that they're not getting much socialization from other kids. And then I'm also acutely aware of how many kids out there are not getting, any parental attention, not getting, a lot of great resources sent home from school. Even if they are, they're limited by, not having access to technology. And then just so many other, just challenges that kids are facing, and not getting that social time. And kids of all ages. So I work with, families with younger kids. I work directly with older kids and with teenagers. And I think the lack of social time is really, it's really hard for kids. What's interesting to me is I'm not seeing tons of anxiety, at least in the kids I work with, but I'm seeing a lot of loneliness, sadness, grief about not having graduation, missing friends, and missing just the kind of the milieu. This example I brought up a few times in other conversations about this kid I work with, and he's like, I miss my friends, but we see each other online and play video games, or we do some social distance stuff. But what's hard is like that kid in my math class who's just like kind of funny, and I'm gonna smile at him in the hallway, but I'm not gonna call him up. I'm not gonna do like a Zoom hangout with him. And I think that's what's hard, is just missing that kind of basic social reinforcement. And then kids are just, they're missing out on, other stuff too. There's kids that we worry about because they're home, not, their parents love them, but don't have the resources to, they have to work at the same time. And so they're, not getting that parental attention and not getting those other things. So I worry a lot about depression in kids. I worry a lot about, just sort of their behavior unraveling and their impulse control unraveling and things like that, and their basic socialization. And then for younger kids too, even just, I was thinking about everyone wearing a mask, and my daughter, who's 2, being a little bit nervous about people now. And is she going to learn how to read facial expressions, if everyone's behind a mask, even if she goes to preschool next year? So there's a lot that I worry about right now, for our kids, in a lot of different ways. And then, on top of the COVID pandemic, we're seeing this, we're becoming more aware of, a lot of us, of this pandemic of racism that so many kids are facing. And that's got its own challenges too. So there's just so much, I think, that is a challenge for our kids and for families right now, than there was maybe 6 months ago. So
Oh, for sure, for sure. And you've described it so beautifully. Not that it is beautiful, but the loneliness, sadness, the grief. But one thing you touched on that actually I have not spent a lot of time thinking about is the facial expression. Kids
yeah,
really
right,
learning to read facial expressions. That's a huge thing that we don't often talk about or think about right now,
right.
at least in my circle. So thank you for bringing that up. How
And if
can
schools
how
go
can
back,
parents? Hmm?
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, how can parents? So, a lot of parents who might be listening to this and are trying to do the very best they can. As you said, it's hard for a lot of parents. They might be working at the same time. Their kids are all home. They're trying to juggle the house, the job, the children, the education, everything. How can they, with the resources they may or may not have, how can they make the most out of supporting their children, helping with that loneliness, sadness, grief, and also, you brought up the facial expressions. What can we do about that too?
I think as parents, we can talk about emotions on so many different levels. And whether it's little kids, just even kind of talking about what are you feeling and helping them, if they're not seeing lots of adults, because masks are on, right? But like, I read this interesting study a few years ago that was like, with little kids, if you look at picture books and you talk about just pointing to the characters, what do you think this character is feeling right now? That actually those kids then, by the time they're in like kindergarten, first grade, they're more empathic, they're sharing and cooperating more because they're building their emotional intelligence skills.
Hmm.
So even just kind of things like that, I think I've been actually deliberately, as I go out in public, like not wearing sunglasses in summer so that I can make more facial expressions with my eyes to people so that I look friendlier. um, Even
I
just,
love it.
and other cultures actually communicate more with their eyes than we do in the West, where we communicate more with our mouths. So I think things like this, are ways of thinking about that kind of mask and facial expression thing. And then, I think just the best thing we can do as parents is to be as present as possible when we're able to be present. And what that means to me is like, yeah, a lot of us are also working at the same time, are also doing homeschooling, are also doing 10 other things, or maybe caring for our own parents at the same time, right? That's part of my situation right now. And but finding ways to really carve out time when we are able to be present with our kids, to be absolutely present, or to invite them into those things that we're doing. Like, yeah, we got to cook dinner. Is that something we can involve the kids in a little math lesson at the same time? I worry about my parents, but can I also, get my parents on Zoom to read to my kids, and then my kids are happy and my parents are happy, and I get 5 minutes to talk about the next day's plans with my wife. Like these kinds of things also. And I think finding ways to bring in rituals and routines, whether it's rituals that maybe belong to our cultural or spiritual tradition, or coming up with new ones. This is, cultures change through big traumatic historical events like the ones that we're in, and we've been doing more mindfulness than ever as a family. We've been doing more morning meeting as a family, where we talk about the day's plans and we preview them, and we do more gratitude at night. And so the time we do have together, we try to make it more special, or make it more ritualized in some ways, so that again, we're really connecting and really appreciating that connection time that we do have. So making the most of the time that we do have, even if it is like a minute between Zoom calls, to
Right.
really get that hug in, or share that snack together, or whatever it might be, I think is part of it. Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. And when we are present, being fully present, and being creative in how we carve out that time, like you said, even if it's a minute here or a minute there, but really being creative how we invite our children in to do tasks and the normal parts of running a household, folding the laundry. I can remember years ago, totally different time, where my littlest climbed into the basket and was wearing, the laundry on her head. And, that was part of the folding laundry, ritual, so to speak, was that she was in the
Right.
basket. And, it's just making the most of those moments. And you're still getting something done at the same time. You're connecting and teaching and encouraging your child to participate with you in whatever activity you are doing. But at the same time, you need to also step into their world, I think, as a parent and
Right.
participate in their world, whatever that looks like for them and with them, in full on presence. So it's a
And one of the
juggling act, isn't it?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we know about resilience, if you look at whether it's psychology, which is my discipline, or whether it's anthropology or history or spirituality, is that one of the ways that people get through difficult times is by contributing to something larger than themselves. Like, and I don't mean, just like do the laundry kids or do the dishes, but like also in the midst of this pandemic, right, to like have kids, like, right, start being pen pals or sending artwork to the retirement community that can't get visitors, or have teenagers tutor younger kids that are falling behind in school, like to feel, like when we feel helpless, one of the best things we can do is do something that's helpful. And so it's really empowering for our kids to feel like they're contributing to making the world a better place right now when the world feels like a really hard place. And that's something that we can do as a family. I mean, I can't sew, and I do know families that are like sewing masks with their kids, and these kinds of things. Making signs to support activists, like hanging them up in the windows, things like that. I think really help kids feel involved and empowered, and then more resilient, and also connect us with other people. That
Mhm.
connects us with the folks in the retirement community, or sending thank you notes to the folks working on the front lines. Like, these are ways that then we're actually building new relationships during a time of crisis that, maybe that, high school junior would never have met that sixth grader unless they were tutoring them online. And so we can actually strengthen our communities during this time rather than just, feel like we're all in total isolation and everything's falling apart.
That is beautiful. And the broader picture is children learn so much about the world,
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
and community and connection by all that you just shared. I mean, there's such a huge opportunity now to step into being part of the larger picture and
Yeah.
in both the pandemic as well as racism. I mean, we're here to
Right.
change the world, and today
Right.
it couldn't be any bigger in change than what's going on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
And for the
curious.
kids to be a part of it is so incredible, to feel like they can be a part of history, and realize that they are, is so empowering and bring so much meaning in a time that can feel kind of meaningless. Like, what's the point of all this? We're stuck at home, or like, this is terrible, I'm isolated. It's like, no, there's bigger things than that. I mean, missing the prom is important, but there's also bigger things too that you can connect with than just the prom. I think, and holding both of those, I think, is a challenge, but I think an amazing opportunity for our families.
For sure. Now, I just had a college graduate, and so seeing the bigger picture is not something at the time of upset and missing out that they're able to see. So,
Hmm.
those people that are listening that may have seen their children or still see their children going through that grief period of missing something that was very
Yeah.
important to them. I think we have to allow that process, because the last thing a child wants to hear or a young adult wants to hear is, get over yourself. Like, there's a bigger picture here. But they have to come to
Right.
terms with that through conversation, through, emotions, and moving through the journey of loss in order to see the bigger, picture of perhaps gain in some respects.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Absolutely.
Your kids are very young, but I'd love to, beautiful ages. I don't mean young in any, negative sense, of course. But I'm curious how you might bring up racism with 2 and 5-year-olds. Is there something that you and your wife do currently to help your children kind of see the world, learn about this from a positive standpoint, how to encourage and include and be part of a worldwide community that holds each other at the highest level of human kindness?
Yeah, I think that's such an important question, such a hard question. And I think, like many other, folks, especially white folks, like we're stumbling through it, trying to figure it out. And and it's been a real challenge, with our 2-year-old, I think trying to talk about and kind of show her models of different kinds of people, and in different picture books, and try to kind of expose her in different ways to different kinds of people in the world. We happen to live in a very diverse city and neighborhood, which we really appreciate and value. Trying to expose her to different kinds of people and cultures and foods, as well as just different looking kinds of people in books, and even at her young age, and talking about different role models, especially for young girls. And I think with our son, his school is a really wonderful resource for doing a lot of social justice work, and they sent home a lot of really great resources, and they actually had a socially distanced chalking event outside of the school where kids were writing stuff. And so we started to have some of these conversations with him about what's going on in the world. And it's a privilege to avoid these things, right? And so we have to step out of our comfort zone and start having these challenging conversations that are awkward, and I think continuing to have them, right? It's not just that we have them in February or that we have them in May, when there's a lot of activism going on. Is that we, and what we said was, and I don't know if we're doing this right for one thing, but that this is a lifelong conversation and a lifelong project to try to fix these injustices for our family. Anyway, that it's really important to do that. And so we try to kind of keep the conversation alive and show him that we're open to having these conversations and answering questions as best we can. And again, I don't know if we're doing this right, but we're certainly trying, and talking to other families about what they're doing, what kinds of books they're reading, what kinds of conversations they're having. Pressing for more advocacy in our school and our school district to have these conversations. Even from distance learning how to have these conversations, those kinds of things. So these are a few of the things. As an author, I try to, I've actually, like, in the past with my kids' books, like, advocated for more diversity in the illustrations and in the folks that I work with in terms of illustrators. So, there's little things that we can do. And again, not always sure whether I'm doing it right, but having that humility to know that I'm not doing it right, and to know that this work isn't ever over. And we took our son to a march, socially distanced, and we wore masks. And, we live in a certain kind of neighborhood where, like, literally everyone on our street, like, walked to the march in Cambridge, Massachusetts, of course, right? To the rally on the Common. But that was also really important, I think, for him to see, and that he was making signs, and that kind of thing. And again, feeling a part of something bigger, that's about not him, but about helping other people and helping make the world a better place, and to continue doing that. And we actually, we're on vacation right now, but there's a little rally at an intersection. Certainly where I live, a lot of the busier streets, people are holding up signs every day, and even where we're on vacation, people are doing that. So seeing that this is something that really is important, and continuing to talk about it, and continuing to talk about justice and what that looks like, and injustice, what that looks like. So I guess that's kind of what I'm doing. And I'm looking, just as everyone is, I'm looking for resources too, and thinking about how to do this best, and certainly do it better than I have been.
But I think there is not necessarily a right or wrong. There's every day trying to show up and keep the
Right.
conversation going in the best
Yeah.
possible way we can. And so you're doing that. If everyone in the world did what you just described, it would be beautiful. So, I
Yeah.
think you're doing a wonderful job with very young children to keep the conversation going, to expose them to bring in resources and picture books, and, talk with them about, diversity and foods and cultures. I mean, these are all really important steps. So, I think you're doing a wonderful job. And thank you for sharing all of that, because
I
I know it's very
don't
personal. It gets right into the personal world of, what are you doing at home? So
Right.
thank you for
Right.
sharing that, and for continuing to, to do that with your children, and to help this world be different than what it currently is. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what we all need to do, is take part in that.
Right, right.
So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the breathing book. And, I wondered if you could share with our listeners a little bit about the book and your inspiration and who is this for, so they can uncover this beautiful opportunity to perhaps get that.
Yeah, absolutely. So every time I read a book, I think this is my new favorite, and that's how I feel about this until I started working on the sequel. But the breathing book has been a really fun project. It actually is both my wife and I, with increasingly toward the end some input from my son as he got old enough. And we are inspired by some of your listeners might be familiar with Press Here, which is a very sweet interactive kind of book.
Mhm.
Um, and so we're thinking like, what would like a mindfulness press here look like? Like what would, what if, rather than your breath or rather than a visualization, what if the book itself was the anchor of your attention and awareness in meditation and mindfulness? And so that's what the book is. And it's, it sort of opens with, feel the book in your hands and, how much does it weigh? Is it smooth? Is it rough? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? Turn the page. Does turning page 5 sound different than turning page 7? Think about where the paper came from, like these little kind of activities that are the book itself. Can you balance the book on your head? Can you put the book on your belly and feel your breath move up and down? Like these kinds of things where you use the book as the anchor of attention. Turn the page with your breath. Like these kinds of silly little activities that I certainly think are a lot of fun, and we had so much fun coming up with them. My wife and I came up with this huge list, and then we went out to dinner and spent about an hour and a half whittling our list of like 50 little activities down to maybe more like 15 or 18, and then the editors, of course, then chopped away some of our favorites, which happens every time you write a book. But left some real nuggets in there that we're really proud of and that we think are a lot of fun for families and for kids.
Awesome. Well, I hope that our listeners will take the time to check out that book, and I'll be sure to include the link here so that they can. So, you've shared just your incredible wisdom, what you are doing at home, what you share with the world. Are there any parting words that you'd like to share with people who, are trying to just get through their day that might help them just to create more calm, more peace with themselves and the family in their home?
Yeah, absolutely, Sue. And that's such a good question, and so important now more than ever. I'm just, off a phone call with a new case, of someone that's got multiple kids at home and is just like, it's just chaos. And um, to me it starts with us, like as parents, like, and then it really does trickle down. And the research actually bears this out too. I mean, everyone says start with yourself, right? But it's like actually the science shows the parents who practice mindfulness and self-regulate have kids that are more mindful and more well-regulated. And, as we calm down, our kids calm down. I often kind of cite this meme in my talks that says, never in the history of calming down has anyone ever calmed down by being told to calm down. And it's like, right? I mean, I've tried it when I was a sped teacher. I've tried it as a therapist. My 5-year-old hates this, right? It's like, how do we calm ourselves down and invite our children into that calmer space, right? To me, that's what it's about. And so it's finding for myself, what are the moments between Zoom calls that I maybe just look out the window for 3 minutes and watch the different shades of green of the tops of the trees waving in the breeze, or noticing the different sounds I hear, or coming down to dinner and talking about what were the best parts of our day or the harder parts of our day as we bring a little bit of gratitude in, or just doing a few breaths, kind of fun goofy breaths with my kids. Again, I've got younger kids throughout my day, and then it starts to integrate in. And again, as I mentioned earlier, like having a ritual and a routine can help, whether it's just knowing that this is what we do in the morning, or this is what we do before homework, or this is what we do before bed, that these are just kind of built in and are these little touch points these little life rafts in the day where we can just reconnect with ourselves, reconnect with each other, and maybe bring some kind of mindfulness or gratitude practice in. And as kids get older and become teenagers, they're less, they roll their eyes at us when we say, what was the best part of your day? But they still ask themselves that question, right? Even if they don't give us the answer, they don't want to give us that credit, but they'll still maybe think that to themselves. Or we'll
It's
say,
integrated. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They've internalized it by that point.
Yeah.
Is certainly my hope anyway. They won't do the breaths with us, but they'll secretly do it before they start their homework or something. So,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
We are the models. I mean, you summarized it so beautifully. We are the models for our children in every way, shape, and form. They're looking at us all the time to see not what we tell them to do, but what we're actually doing for ourselves. So
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
just so important.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you have just so beautifully shared so many wonderful things, and shared about your family, which I really appreciate, and I'm sure our listeners do as well. And I want to thank you so much for being a part of this, and also for your book, which sounds amazing. I need to get my copy myself, just for me, not even for my grandkids, just for me.
That was
So
the best review I got in the pandemic was, I need this book for me. Like, forget the kids.
right.
Great.
Well, as you just said, we're the adult that needs to lead the way. So what a beautiful way to come to its most simplistic terms in a book like that. So I think it's wonderful. I think that everyone should have one in their home. So, and I'll help spread the word.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining me. And thank you to all our listeners. Remember, every moment is a new moment for conscious connections.
Thanks for listening to Conscious Parents, Thriving Kids. If you like what you heard, the best compliment you can give us is to share this podcast with a friend. And be sure to give us some stars and a favorable review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in.